Now you have a term, um, and I think this is where the rubber hits the road. This is where the healing stuff can really come in.
Mm-hmm.
It's what you call deservability.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that um, a real positive response or a way to respond positively to the stresses of life, and this includes the traumas, is deservability. However you approach it. What do you mean by deservability?
So the deservability is a term that was coined by Louise Hay, who was this woman who, with positive affirmations, um, she healed herself with cancer. And I am a real advocate of positive affirmations, and I say them all the time. As a result of the pandemic, I think I was able to learn how to grow plants, right? And and so I give these plants positive affirmations. You deserve to grow. You deserve to be here. I deserve to grow. I deserve to be here. So the notion of deservability, according to Louise Hay, is that we all want many things in our lives, and we often wonder why we don't get those things. A big part of it has to do with the concept of deserving it or deservability. If at our deepest core of our being, we don't feel that we deserve to have what we wish for, that belief will block those things or block our blessings from coming into our lives. We end up settling for less than we truly desire as a result of our limiting beliefs. To achieve our goals in life, it's necessary to work on our beliefs as well as take concrete actions toward what we want. So that's where the saying, what you think about, you bring about. Um, another good example of that is to know that what I want can be manifested and what I don't want can be thrown away. And it's just simply about how I think about that and how I think and what I tell myself that I deserve or that I don't deserve. I tell everybody, I drive a Cadillac, right? I'm an old Black lady and I drive a Cadillac. And I like to drive in the fast lane because everybody knows you don't drive a Cadillac fast, right? And so people say, well, why don't you just drive in the slow lane? It's like, no, I like to drive in the fast lane. And if I'm not going fast enough, then you have to go around me. So I think I deserve to drive in the fast lane just simply because I say it so, right? So, but deservability is a notion that we will achieve what we want. I live now in Rio Vista, and I own a mortgage. I don't own a home, but I own a mortgage. And I was paying $2,600 a month for rent in an apartment, nice apartment in Castro Valley. And a friend of mine said, you know, you're going to give somebody $30,000 a year for rent. That just doesn't make sense. And I said, you're absolutely right. And I had been saying before, this wasn't my first home, but I was saying, you know, I don't want to be a homeowner because it's so much responsibility. And guess what? I couldn't ever get it together to own a home. But in my mind, in my core, I knew that I deserved that. So a friend of mine told me like 10 years before she said that to me, you know, all Black people are retiring to Rio Vista. And I said, okay, I'm going to bookmark that. And when I retire and move, and the next time I buy a house, it's going to be in Rio Vista. And I just bookmarked that in my mind or pinned it the way the kids say now. So then she made this comment to me about the $30,000. I got on, she said that June 28th. I got on the phone. My credit score, which had been in the low 400s, was now well over 700 because I was paying attention to my deservability, like on an unconscious level, paying my bills, paying them on time or even early. Not, well, I can't say not frivolously spending because I do frivolously spend, but, and so I was able to get a mortgage. I came up here the first time. I had never been here before. The first house I looked at, it was already sold. The second house, I told myself it had 3 elements that were important to me: an island, a fireplace, and a sunken bathtub. I moved in from June 28th. I moved in on September. I closed on August 28th, and I moved in on September 1st. That's a perfect example of deservability, that things go your way if you think about them and you know in your core that, yes, I'm blessed and that I'm not blocking my blessings. It's like you talked about that fear. Fear causes your blessings to be blocked. Fear causes your blessings to be blocked. If you can think about it, you can achieve it. Why? Because you deserve it. That's deservability. That makes sense?
Yeah. And see, this also ties into sixfold stages to mental freedom, by the way, because deservability is only manifested on a high level if there's a sense of self-love. You agree?
Yes, yes.
And this idea that you don't deserve is what we call low self-esteem. You've got doubts about yourself,
Yes.
doubts about whether you're worthy, doubts about whether you're entitled.
Right.
You know, I remember I was out at state years ago. It was in the 80s, and I had bought this 300ZX. I drive sports cars, by the way. The only thing I like. They're fast,
Fast cars.
beautiful. You know, they got all the things that I like. I don't like driving other than this. So one of my faculty members comes up. I just bought it. This is 1987. I bought it in 87, so it was 1987. And she looks at this car and looks at it forever, and then she says, "Well, I guess you deserve it." It took her, number one, to assume that I didn't deserve a car. Give me a break. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And it took her all this time to figure this out because it's the only new car I ever had. Not because I don't think I deserve a new car. It's a waste of money. You know what I mean? So it's the only one. I wanted to experience the smell of the new car, which I understand is not healthy, but it was my experience. And I still have that car sitting out in my driveway. I don't drive it anymore. I got another sports car. You know what I mean? So the thing is, she figured I didn't deserve this. You know what I mean? So that's an assumption. That's what you call low self-esteem. You know what I mean? Are you going to walk up to some white person and say, you didn't deserve this, you didn't deserve that? But that was an extension of what she thought about herself.
Exactly.
Right? She didn't think she deserved a lot of this stuff. And so you didn't either. That was an expression of that. And that leads to misery. You know what I mean? I got a philosophy in life. I surround my stuff with the things I love. And I'm not talking about material things. You know?
Yep.
What I'm doing in my life, the woman I love, you know what I mean? My friends. They are all people who reinforce positivity and bring love into the equation. They'll jack me up when they think I'm wrong. My best friend will every now and then say, brother, I got to tell you this. That's what a good friend is. And definitely my wife, you know what I mean?
Right.
But the point is, they're positive influences in my life. And when the negatives come in, well, okay, we'll deal with it.
Right.
But I'm not inviting it in. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's banned from my house. Negativity, don't be bringing this certain people in my house, period. You ain't coming in. You know what I mean? I don't have you in my life, but you definitely are going to be following up my space. You know what I mean? So self-love in the sixfold stages to mental freedom, this is one of the goals of this, is to, through self-knowledge and self-respect, to cultivate a sense of self-love. And that is both a love of your people, a love of yourself, a love of humanity. And it's all the other loves, the love of God, love of family, all the things that make up love. You know what I mean? And it's unconditional, as you've been expressing it. You've been honest on, your shortcomings at different times. It's embracing that and being honest and not being in denial on it. And then in some cases, working on it, so that is a part of that. And then also, when you love yourself, you're not caught up in someone else's definition of you. If they got a good point, yes. Other than that, you don't care because you know yourself. And so you're not sitting around waiting for someone else's judgment,
Right.
I often say God doesn't judge.
Exactly.
God's unconditional. When you pass to the other side, it's your car that judges you. That is your destiny, that keeps a memory of everything you've done in your life. And in ancient Kemet, they had those 42 assessors
Mm-hmm.
where the so-called negative confessions occur. I didn't steal. I didn't do this. Those aren't 10 commandments.
Mm-hmm.
Those are affirmations of what you did do. In other words, when you say you didn't steal, it means you're honest. You know what I mean? That you didn't commit adultery, you're faithful. You
Mm-hmm.
know, these kinds of things. So God's not judging you on that. You are.
Right.
And in ancient Kemet, they have a saying where the person that's going to the other side pleads with his car to defend him. But the car is dedicated to the truth. So the car is going to defend what you did that was right, and it's going to put it right on the table, what you did wrong. You know what I mean? And so then that's the balance. So in life, I think that these are key things in terms of life. Follow your truth,
Mm-hmm.
know yourself, love yourself. And then going back to the stressors, and we're going to face stress, and there's some stress. And by the way, I want to say this: I did 3 shows on astrology, and some of you got it, and a lot of you didn't. You know what I mean? There's a cycle in astrology which has to do with Saturn, and every planet has a rotational cycle. And Saturn's rotational cycle, where it returns to its place in its rotation around the sun, is approximately 29 and a few, 29 and a quarter days, whatever. 2 rotations are very important because that's the point of maturity where you're nearly 60 years of age. So when someone reaches that cycle, the question is, what have you learned in previous cycles? Well, there's a mid-cycle of Saturn, and that's in between the first and the end of the second cycle. And that cycle occurs around 44 years of age. And what I would say is that most people are going to experience a life crisis around that time.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason is, in terms of astronomically, is because those planets signify different things. Saturn is order, it's discipline, it's the conservative forces in society. And inside of you, it's the balance or imbalances that you have in life. And so what happens at around 44, 45, people usually experience a life crisis. And that life crisis usually has to do with things unintended to. So the one I gave is an example of my life crisis dealing with me not being able to deal with the feminine and having to face mental illness in my family with my wife. And I realized I'm living with somebody that had this and didn't see it. That was my life crisis. First, I didn't know how to handle it. I knew nothing about psychology. I knew nothing about mental illness. One of my best friends, Jitu Usi, was the one that told me, take her to a psychologist. I didn't even know to do that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know what delusion was and didn't know how to respond to it, you know? And that's part of what the Buddha says a life crisis is, not being able to handle a situation. Because if you knew how to handle it, it wouldn't be a crisis. You wouldn't face it because you've dealt with those issues. These are issues I hadn't dealt with. And so they presented themselves in the form of out of control. Mental illness is out of control. I'm a control freak. I'm a warrior. I control everything. I win all battles. But here I am, everything's out of control. My whole life was out of control. It wasn't usually a crisis occurs in multiples, 2 or 3 at the same time. Death usually occurs that way too. And so I had multiple crises. My sister dropped her daughter off who was unmanageable at 12 years of age and stayed with us from 84 to 90, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then I had to chair Black Studies, which I didn't want to do. It's one thing if you're doing something you want to do. I like to speech. I'm good at administrating, but I didn't want to administer. I will organize and write and speak. That's me. So then I had that. And then I was in a situation where I was in an investment club and on real estate. And I had enough signs. I had made some money out of it and should have walked away, but I got greedy and went back in and invested. And then I encouraged some other people to invest and promised them I'd guarantee their loans.
Oh, no.
This is 1984. I come back home, the investment club had collapsed. So I got 3 of these things, but the biggest thing is this mental thing, but it was me. It was that I couldn't see it. And so by being able to go inside myself and to look at myself, that was really the key to that. But that was caused by a Saturn cycle. In other words, you think these planets are just up there for material things. But some of the natural things that Ms. Moore has described as natural things you go through in life, you lose somebody. That's people die. You know what I mean? There's tragedy in life. That happens. People get ill. That happens. You know, those are normal life cycles. And so a part of what we might categorize as trauma, and they can be very traumatic and definitely stressful events, occur through normal life cycles. We understood these cycles better, we can handle it. The final thing I wanted to say about racism is this. Racism, one of the best cures to racism is to fight it. It's to fight it. One of the worst ways to handle it is to absorb it. You know, and there are different ways to fight it. But in the 6-fold stages to mental freedom, the awakening process is triggered by disturbance. And disturbance comes through how we see racism affecting us in our lives. And it causes us to be disturbed and upset because often we're going to see a face of it we didn't see before, and it's going to cause us to see things in a different way. But when we are experiencing this as a part of a collective, you're experiencing it individually because that's how it affects you. But when you're a part of something bigger, then what you see is you have the capacity for change. And that is one of the best ways to overcome racism. And the best ways to overcome stress. Fight the power, baby, and fight it on the grounds where you can win. And instead of you taking the stress, put the stress on the people that caused it. Put the stress on the system that caused it. And when you are in this zone, you know, where you're in control of your life, fear isn't what drives you, but you're going to drive fear into the hearts of people who are doing the wrong things and trying to be the boogeyman. You know what I mean? Huh?
Yeah.
I have gone through stress. I've just acknowledged some of it, but rarely, because I'm in control of this shit. You know what I mean? When it's coming down. And usually people are going to be coming to me like, well, we got a problem here. So I'm the strategist and stuff like that. But the key point is when you're under oppression, the best cure is to fight it. And fight it in your way. That's the other thing. Find your battlefield because everybody's battlefield isn't the same. Find your battlefield, but make sure it's not one that tears you up.
Tears you apart. Yeah.
Where you're doing a Brer Rabbit on somebody, but at the same time, you've been so underground on this that it's eating you up. Brer Rabbit is great. Use Brer Rabbit. For people who don't know, that's the old mythical rabbit who outfoxed the fox. That's an old story coming from Africa. Most blacks of my generation and some younger, when they're really getting ready to pull something off, they'll say, I Brer Rabbited them. But Brer Rabbit is usually a symbol for High John the Conqueror. High John the Conqueror is the warrior spirit, but the warrior spirit is always making smart moves. We like to worship the people that get killed. Well, we should, because some of them have made great contributions, but do not take on the martyr complex. that it's necessary to die. It's necessary to die naturally and normally and live as long as possible. Tap dance on your enemies' heads. Avoid letting them tap dance on yours as much as possible. We don't always have control. But collective movements are the best way to express mental health, to express happiness,
Mm-hmm.
and to have internal peace.